We've got a 95 Camry here with 124,000 miles, and of course after a while cars start to develop leaks. You get a little spotting and staining in the driveway and in the garage, and that bothers most people. And so there's some things we can do to try to locate that. As we look around here, things look fairly dry, but we can see some fluid down in here. And sometimes it's hard to tell where it's coming from. So one of the things we can do is use an ultraviolet light, and that'll make it fluoresce and shine and make it a lot easier to tell where it's coming from. So if we move this out of the way, hard to tell, both these hoses are a little wet, but you can see the dye all around this hose. So we know that that's where the leak is coming from. It's dripping down here and just kind of making a mess all over. And so that's something we can easily correct. Sometimes leaks will develop to where you've got a little bit of leaking kind of all over the place. And what we'll do is put a little bit of dye in the engine or whatever we think is leaking, let it run for a little bit, bring it back in, and we can tell where the dye is located with this ultraviolet light and pinpoint where it's leaking from. So now we've gone ahead and raised the vehicle, looking underneath, and you can see with the ultraviolet light that there's some dye that has trickled all the way down to underneath the car. And so that tells us we've got a fairly severe leak on here that ought to be repaired. Now some of the areas we might look at too, and this car isn't too bad. There's a little bit of oil starting to seep out around here. I probably wouldn't do too much with it just yet. A little bit coming out between the engine and the transmission, and that's usually a rear main oil seal. If it gets to where it's dripping, then we'd want to address that. But if it's just marginal like this, unless someone's really pushy and doesn't want any oil at all in the driveway, then we would go ahead and fix that. But it probably doesn't pose a problem at this point. That's not going to amount to much. But you do want to check your oil regularly, more regularly than what you just bring it into a place to have done. That's something that's good to learn to do on your own and be able to tell if you're a little low on oil. Because it's one thing to have a leak, it's another thing to run out of oil and blow up your engine. That gets real expensive, so we don't want to have that happen. I can see under here where somebody has worked on the car before and painted the oil pan orange, probably to see if anybody has removed the plug. Maybe somebody was checking for a leak and they wanted to make sure nobody was playing with it, causing a problem. So if you ever see that, that's probably done by another shop. They're just checking their work.